I want to touch on three major themes. The first is what it means to know ourselves as men of faith and our relationship with God and other travelers on this journey. We're standing in the gap in the midst of a journey that is about our destiny. And so, how do we know God and other travelers on this journey is important. Secondly, how are our steps ordered on this path and by whom? And then thirdly, how do we remain psychologically and spiritually fit for this journey as we move forward? It's very, I think, fitting to first recognize, and you all know this, that our destiny was secured by the life and sacrifices of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I leave the theology of all of that to Dr. Cummings and the ministers, as I am a psychologist, and I raise more questions than I provide answers. But I do know what it means to have grown up in the church and have had men and women of faith play an important role in preparing me for my journey. And I'm grateful for that. Secondly, I want us all to remember that we are here because we stand on the shoulders of greatness. Each man of faith, each man of the Imani community had a father or a grandfather or a brother or an uncle or a minister or a teacher or a mentor whose shoulders prepared the way for us to pursue our destiny. And it might be important for us to take a moment and just reflect on who they were, and for the young men of Imani, who they are and who they will continue to be. So let's just take a moment and bring into our minds and into our hearts all of the shoulders that we stand on. And Brother Malcolm Westbrook's named a number of them in his prayer as well.
15 years. Yeah.
This is foundational. The ground, the roots, the tree that have held us for generations to generations. And because we are often underappreciated and last to be recognized, we can lose touch with who we are and who set us on our path to greatness. I want to invite you to engage with me through a period of self-reflection. At a crossroads in my young adult life, when every decision that was before me seemed problematic or wrong, through a set of what I now understand was divine intervention, I was invited to have an hour of consultation with Dr. Howard Thurman in his office in San Francisco. Many of you know that Dr. Thurman was the spiritual advisor of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mrs. Coretta Scott King and other members of the civil rights movement. And some of you know that Dr. Thurman was quite a presence. He was a big man, and he had eyes that sometimes appeared to look in you and look through you. And as a young man being invited to his office and being ushered in, I saw this man, this giant in my eyes, seated in front of a wall picture of his great-grandmother. And his great-grandmother had been a slave, and she in the picture was smoking a corn cob pipe and was adorned with a headscarf that my mother would have called a head rag, if you will. But surrounding her was all of Dr. Thurman's accomplishments, degrees, awards, recognition. And as I sat there taking all of this in, I heard my name called, Jimmy Turner. Who is Jimmy Turner? Was the question that Dr. Thurman asked. And I went on tilt. If anybody else had asked me that question, I'd had many answers. But to have Dr. Thurman ask me, who is Jimmy Turner, was quite a confrontation. So when I found my breath and started to speak, I said, I am a psychologist. I'm a graduate of UC Berkeley. I'm a professor at a university. And I noticed Dr. Thurman kind of shaking his head gently saying, no, that ain't it. No, that ain't it. And somewhere in me, I said, I'm lost. And Dr. Thurman kind of gently closed his eyes and was in deep thought. And he said to me when he spoke, Jimmy Turner, you are on the right path. You are on the right path. I'm clear that I'm a psychologist today because of that hour with Dr. Thurman. It was life-giving, it was life-affirming, and it gave me permission as a young man to trust my own decisions. We spent an hour examining the mundane challenges of my life at that time and ended with a call to action. In one of the decisions I was trying to make that would have been probably the most destructive, Dr. Thurman said, run, don't walk. Run, don't walk. And I ran. As men of faith, we must know who we are. We must be able to answer the question, who is Brother Malcolm Westbrook? Who is Reverend Jamal Hunter? We must know why we got the name that was given to us and what expectations were placed by our parents in choosing that name. Who am I is not about what I have and what I do. Those things come later. It is about self-knowledge, knowing that I am a child of God for whom much is given and from whom much is expected. How does self-knowledge empower and sustain us on our journey through life? You know, as we work to know ourselves, how does this knowledge empower and sustain us on this journey? Not only are we known by who we are, we're also known by our actions. Let's remember, as was reminded to us earlier, of what we have done. And again, Brother Malcolm spoke to some of these. We have survived slavery, lynching, Jim Crow laws and criminal injustice, police violence, the proliferation of drugs and alcohol in our community, assaults on our women, the miseducation of our children, economic insecurity, and most recently, COVID. Not only have we survived, but we have been resilient and we have thrived. I want to say that again. Not only have we survived, we have also been resilient and we have thrived. As men of faith, we have had to answer several questions. What is my responsibility to myself and to others? How do I show up? How do we show up as men who sometimes are called upon to be protectors, comforters, lovers, supporters, teachers, and as needed, limit setters and disciplinarians? How do we show up? How have I been a brother to my brothers? The dominant culture teaches us to be competitive and hostile toward each other. How have I been a husband or a partner to my wife or loved ones? Have the requirements for success limited my time for relationships? How have I parented my children? How have I showed up for my church community? Although our steps are ordered by best intentions, by our best intentions, we are human beings. Secular and political leaders often quote the phrase that if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And by implication, choose me and my way. The mentors that have furthered my journey believed that the universe, which I would call God, cooperates with a made-up mind. And if I am to answer the question of responsibility, I need to understand what a made-up mind is. A made-up mind requires the development of a liberatory consciousness, the development of a liberatory consciousness. Barriers to the fulfillment of our destiny are internalized messages that we were taught or caught growing up about what it means to be a man according to the dominant narrative, the dominant culture. A Black man, we understood, we caught, needed to be strong at all costs, to minimize the expression of emotions, and to strive to be twice as good to succeed. It is often these messages that lead to workaholism and the absence of self-care. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying that hard work and striving for being the best is a bad thing. It has been a survival strategy that has worked, and sometimes too well for us, but not without cost. Many of us have difficulty appreciating that our sons did not catch this germ as deeply as we did and are approaching success in a different way. Standing in the gap and staying on the path means recognizing where we have been and how we can appreciate and support the journey of the future generations of Black men and women. What does it mean to travel our path with a liberatory consciousness, free of internalized depression and working steadfastly not to pass those attitudes and behaviors on to our children and our children's children when they are not needed or are unhelpful? There are health benefits to moving down the path and standing in the gap with greater ease. Taking time out for relationships, for play, for fun, for meditation and relaxation. Again, I want to bring the wisdom of Howard Thurman into our discussion, because Howard Thurman reminds us that if we quiet ourselves, our minds and our bodies, and shut out the noise of the world, we will hear the sounds of the genuine in each one of us. And our steps will be guided by compassion for ourselves, our brothers, our families, and the community of faith. And this brings me to my last reflection. How am I known temperamentally? How am I known emotionally? How do I show up? Am I viewed as the angry Black man, or am I seen as sad or scared most of the time? How often am I the bringer of joy and peace to my life, to my household, to my community of faith? Joy is the antidote, the medicine that we need to deal with the challenges of life.
You're on mute.
Dr. Turner, you're on mute. You muted yourself by accident.
Sorry, where did I mute? What does any?
When you said joy is the antidote.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to repeat that. Sorry. Joy is the antidote, the medicine that we need to deal with the challenges of life and the daily encounters of oppression. As a Black boy in a world that was often hostile and unpredictable, I developed, like most Black men, armor to keep me safe. Armor meant that it was never possible or never permitted to let them know that I was afraid or to see me cry. Armor taught me to express anger and express anger in 100 different ways and never become violent. I often say when I'm teaching with men that I can do anger in 1,000 different ways. I can do hot, mad, angry, mad, raging mad, and I don't have to be violent. I know how to manage my anger without being violent. But if you ask me to get in touch with sadness and cry, I can't talk, I can't think. I was never given permission as a kid to have an ease with which sadness and fear was expressed. And as a psychologist, I work with women who can cry, problem solve, answer questions, and never miss a stitch because women had more permission to engage these feelings as well. It is my hope that our children and grandchildren are supported in the full expressions of their emotions. Health is about being able to fully express our emotions. Some of you know that 3 years ago, my wife of 30 plus years transitioned. And I am indebted to Cynthia for many things, for being the mother of 2 of my 4 sons, for allowing me to lead even as I have come to understand that often she had chosen the direction that we were headed. But most of all, she taught me the value and the ability to fully embrace joy. Joy for me growing up was a Christmas experience or a birthday party or a teenager, or as a teenager, a kiss from some little girl who I thought made the sun rise and set. Too much joy could be problematic. I don't know how many of you heard growing up, what are you so happy about? I certainly caught that. So to know that joy could be an essential part of my household and experienced on a regular basis was beyond my lived experience and I learned to embrace it, and I am better for it. Making space for the presence of joy does not mean that there will not be times when on this path we stand in the need of prayer. But sandwiching those moments with joy before and after is an act of intentionality and self-care. So as I bring this presentation to a close, I want to call into question the notion that out of this pandemic, we will approach the new normal, and by implication, we will return to the way that it used to be. That as men of faith, it's really important that we are considering this notion. When I think about the number of elders that we have lost during the height of the pandemic, and that number will have a major impact on the so-called new normal. Where will our wisdom figures, or where will wisdom come? Mother Nature is angry and continues to not be heard by people in power. Democracy is on life supports. Crime has reached epidemic proportions. Stress levels and mental illness is at an all-time high. And the unhoused and food insecure family and children are shamefully blamed for their own plight in life. And yet the church continues to be the hope for our future and our North Star. As Imani celebrates over 25 years of faithful service and more, standing in the gap and on the shoulders of men of faith, I trust that we will endure and continue to thrive no matter what the so-called new normal turns out to be. I thank you for giving me this time and space to speak with you, and God bless you always.